it, that it's probably not as complicated as Amber has prepared today what those numbers represent for the city. So she'll be going over that.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, right now, the average Roy resident pays about $384 to Roy City for taxes. If we went with Weber Fire, what the tax commission does is it's the same, almost the same tax amount to the residents. It just gets shifted from us to Weber Fire. So neither side of this is going to come out like this was a great deal and the other one doesn't get any money. It's going to come across with what the fire department costs is approximately what they send to the district. So what that does is just shift the taxes from Roy City to Weber Fire. So what that would do is like on that, just to give an example, there are some rounding errors with how this works out. So our example, Weber Fire would now receive $267. Roy City would receive about $119. So you can see the total amount is approximately the same for the resident within like $1, okay? Now, what Weber Fire has indicated they would do is when this happens, because the taxes are split between the two areas, both those tax rates went down. So what Weber Fire has said they would do was they would like to hold their rate the same so that they can still function at the same rate given the service area that they service. So they would want to increase their rate. What that would do to the residents is now Weber Fire would have an increase and go up to about $318. And this is annually for an average household. Roy City's amount would stay that same at the $119. So the total for the resident would go up to $436 instead of the $384. So this would be about a $52 a year increase or $4.35 a month, which is a 13.58% increase to the residents. If Roy City wanted to keep Roy Fire in Roy City, we have some costs that we need to pay for the fire department. So we have a COLA that we just did a couple weeks ago that the council gave us the go-ahead for. That would be about $124,000 going forward. We need a COLA for next year for about $133,000. And then we need salary adjustments that we've talked about how our firefighters are underpaid. So we would need about $675,000 to bring them up to the midpoint for our surrounding cities. So that doesn't bring them to the top paid areas of the city. We would just shoot for that benchmark midpoint. We also need to increase our capital because we are not putting away enough every year to pay for the fire apparatus, ambulances, all of the equipment that they need. So we would need another $465,000 for capital, putting your total about $1.4 million. This would be almost a 28% tax increase for the residents, which is $107 a year or $895 per month. So to put those two things together in a summary, just so you can see the difference, if we went with Weber Fire District, the estimate that would go to Weber Fire would be $317.91. Then you have your Roy City amount of $118 for a total of $436. If Roy Fire stayed with Roy City, you have the current amount that they're paying of $384, plus the increase that we need of $107. So that would put the cost to the residents at $491 for the total increase of $107 or $895. So that shows you just the tax implications to the residents between staying with Roy Fire or going to the district. And then we did have a couple questions that we asked council members to give us any questions that they had so that we could try to answer them beforehand. These were some of the questions that we had. I think Matt was going to go ahead and answer.
Yeah, and I'll have Chief Williams kind of address some of these too, but we did talk about a little bit of these when Weber Fire District came into the presentation at the city council, but talking about response times, be assured, they talked about keeping the same stations, the same personnel. And so I think that yes, like that would be the ultimate goal, that they would keep the response times, relatively the same. Staff being protected, that was one of their things that they also talked about in that meeting, is that they wanted to protect the staff and move our staff over to them. A lot of these things do go through the negotiation process, right? But these are some of the goals that we've right at face value of ever entering in this conversation. Those were two things that we were very strongly opinionated about. It was about protecting our staff and response times and things. They did indicate that we would have a member to their board. I know another city, when they moved over, they did have another member added to their board. That would require a process on their side, but yes, they would want a Roy City member on their board. The homeowners insurance impacts, it's really in relation to ISO ratings. And we actually, Theron confirmed this today, we have the same rating as a number 3. So the insurance rates, everything like that would stay relatively the same too. Monetary compensation, this is a conversation we had with them early on. It's kind of thought about like as public assets. So when we would move over there, if we choose to do that, these are all owned by the public. So there wasn't an expectation of paying for anything. But again, that's all part of negotiations with what happens to the building is at least what happens to the land. All that hasn't been discussed at all. So we can have those discussions, but I'd have to just say, like, the public, Roy City has paid for this one time already. And if we move over to them, it's not fair to have the citizens pay for that again. So it was just thought that a transfer would just be transferred. So I did address the lease of the building. What does the fire department cost? I guess it kind of depends. That's the lawyer's answer, but an accountant's answer also. $3.5 million to $4 million, depending on revenue. Really, when the revenue fluctuates, that it just kind of goes from there. It's roughly 3.8 million this year estimated, according to our budgets, but when the actuals come in, that can fluctuate a little bit. So that was those were the questions that we received from City Council. If you guys have more, we obviously have staff here to try to answer those questions for you. But this meeting was meant to put this information out for you, and then to have an open discussion. So I can turn it back over to the council and the mayor.
People have any more questions or any comments?
Well, I kind of had a question, but you said it kind of hasn't been discussed yet, and that's just my question about the parcel of land that's the station up on 1900 is on, because isn't that like, it's a parcel land that has the station and like this building, so is it like you have like cut out part of it, or I don't know.
We could cut it out. The initial thought was just to secure it some way and saying it could be leased to them. Just so Roy City retains that property in case they don't want to choose to do fire in the future. That's a common thing that people would do just to secure it. Obviously, we don't want them to come in and have to incur the cost of just building a new station though, because that would just be horribly costly to everybody, right? But yeah, like if that was one of the principles that we wanted to stick by, of a lease agreement or something like that, that's something we could easily negotiate.
And are there any liabilities, financial liabilities that we have with the fire station or the fire department that would be assumed by the district or transferred over to them, along with any assets that we would be transferring?
That would also be, I'm thinking, when you're talking about that, I'm guessing that would be mainly employee compensation with like accrued benefits primarily. So yes, there is a liability there. That could be negotiated as well. Initially, there would have to be some type of transition. I think they would like to see us pay those out or pay them for that liability on that side.
And also in regards to that, a next step in regards to if they're leasing the building, do we then assume responsibility for upgrades or that sort of thing? Or I guess that's part of the contract. How would that work?
Yeah, all part of the contract. Typically on a lease, or I mean, we're under a similar situation with if we were to say we own the ground, you own the building with the complex versus the high school or the school district. You could do something like that, or you could do something to say it's just a lease and that would all be negotiated.
Amber, in regards to the information you had of the increased capital that we would need to put aside for the fire department, so that is really what bumps up the expenses. It sounds like it's that capital. How do we account for that? Same capital will be needed if we join the district. I mean, they will still need new fire trucks. It's just that we don't see that money. So how do we account for that so it really is a little more equal when we're comparing? Because right now we're comparing cost of staff plus capital compared to just cost of staff at the district. How can we balance that? Because when we talk about that dramatic change, I don't know that it covers it.
So we do save some for fire department capital. We save about 185,000 a year. That was established, I think, in 2005, 2007, and that was sufficient at the time. It's considerably gone up as the equipment has cost so much more money. So to pay for this stuff now, what we're doing is just any leftover money we have from each year, we just put into that. So we would be able to, we wouldn't need that money anymore because right now we're just using excess money to pay for that. But we're getting to the point, by doing that, we don't have those capital funds available for fixes to the complex, for fixes to this building. So other areas are suffering because all of those capital needs are being put towards the fire department, where if we didn't need that, we could use what we are saving and put towards the capital needs that we do have here. The district already has a system in place for when they are replacing vehicles, and they have indicated to us that by keeping their rate the same, they are able to stay on their same structure of money that they need and their replacement schedule. And they did a pretty significant increase last year that they have said should be good for the next couple years. Now, we don't know for sure what they will do in the future. That's a question nobody knows, but the indication we've got is that they would like to hold the rate, and that is enough to pay for our fire department, including the capital.
And I do remember them mentioning that another way they pay for capital expenses is they, for instance, send their firefighters to other states to fight fires, and some of that money that they negotiate, I guess, I don't know the right word, but comes back to help pay for some of the stuff that they use, I guess. So, I mean, they do have more resources to get capital, I guess, is what I'm saying, so.
So Mary,
Any questions?
you want to add anything?
I'm sorry, I didn't ask this before. I didn't think of asking this, but I had a resident ask me how
Can you
many.
talk a little bit louder?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Had a resident ask me, and I wish I would have thought to ask this sooner because it may need to be researched or just looked up. But a resident asked me how many of the calls that Roy responded to were actually in Roy. I don't know if you happen to know that or,
I don't have that.
I mean, on the top of your head, no, I
He
didn't know.
ran over, I mean, before they took over Hooper and West Haven Weber, we ran over, a little over 6,000. And we've dropped, I think we're just over 5,200 of calls. But that's a hard question because we do the interlocal agreements and automatic aid. So we go into Weber comes into Roy, when we're not busy, Clinton comes in. So I don't have that figure in front of me.
But in any case, we are an automatic aid, then we're not mutual, the mutual
You're
aid.
both.
We're
So,
both.
so automatic goes into the dispatch. So automatically, if there's a unit not available in Roy, there's a closest unit, which wherever that is. Mutual aid is a request to the battalion chief. So if we get a large structure fire, we don't have adequate, they can now ask dispatch to send a certain piece of equipment. So those are both agreements. Automatic, again, as it says, is automatic, built into the dispatch
Okay,
and
so-
agreements within the county.
So we may do some covering, but we also are getting covered.
Yeah, it's both, yeah.
So
This came up
that may
when
come out the wash.
Dan was here first, and we talked about this last first year or so. But I don't have any figures. in
That's
front of me.
okay. It just came to me and I was like, oh, maybe I should have asked that for him, but it sounds like there's some overlap both ways anyway, so it may just even out, but we could look into that anyway. I can maybe send an
The
email.
purpose of that is each city, maybe Ogden, maybe Weaver can respond to each call without needing support. We don't have enough individuals to staff it appropriately if we didn't do that. So for instance, it's very easy, especially if ambulance 33, which is the third ambulance we have, when we can't staff that, which we haven't been able to do very frequently. If that's not available on a transfer, then the two go on another call. Roy City's less vulnerable if we didn't have those agreements in place. So it's a way to back each other up. If not, we would have to pay to have all of that there, so.
Sometimes, the numbers for certain things are pretty easy to find, but there are some softer numbers that are definitely difficult. Can you maybe just verbalize what some of those drawbacks, the cons to the transfer would be that might not be identified specifically with these numbers?
Can you be specific?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like what are, we have the pros and we have the cons for going. What would be some of the disadvantages with going to the district?
Well, I think that's a determination for you to just consider as council members. So I would ask you this question: what are your goals and expectations for the fire department? Because that's really where we need to start. And I think a good question is, how did we get here? So there could be cons, there could be pros, but what do you want the fire department to be? Council
So if
members,
we
what are
take
your,
that as a standard, if we just say, okay, we want top quality service, we want top quality fire service. And if we're trying to look at pros and cons and we're trying to analyze it and we're trying to make a decision, which pro trumps, is it completely financial decision that we're making? Is it, are there other components to this decision? So if we want quality care, quality service, and we're willing to pay, if it's extra, we're willing for, or not, but what are some of the other cons besides that?
let's talk about the pros.
Okay.
We have struggled since I've been here and really going back, going through my files lately, over 20 plus years of underfunding the fire department. And that's been an issue. I don't think it's a matter, I don't know the political stuff that's gone on between directors and stuff. I don't think that's been a play. I think the concern has been, how do you fund the fire department appropriately to give it to what your goals are? So it's you're saying you want exceptional service. So where we have failed lately, right? We've seen 8 to 10 people leave per year in the last 3 years. That seems to be ongoing. When that happens, you have two things that occur. We can't staff it. I think I've talked about this. We have injuries. We have people on vacation. We can't appropriately staff the apparatus to respond to the calls. So the pro, I guess, of going to Weber, number one, is it meets your expectation of providing exceptional service to the residents. And that is, you can say response time. To me, it's having the staffing available to respond to the calls. And then having the experience, right? I explained this just a minute ago. If you go to the ER, what kind of service do you want? That's an easy one. If you go to a mechanic, what type of service do you want? That's what we're talking about. Now, I'm charged to say, you want exceptional service, and I'm going to say, give me the path to do that. So that's where we have struggled to do that. We really want to be here discussing this if we're appropriately doing it. So we're here because we haven't been doing that. So the pros are, that's been met. Number one, it's been my guiding principle not to base my decision or to bring this up based on my emotion. We've been charged to go respond to any emergency in the city or whatever that is. That's our responsibility. Two, you got to have men and women to do it. And they need to have experience. We need to have, obviously, recruiting, retaining our employees. And then we have to have that consistency. And that's been another, I wouldn't say it's a failure, but we haven't done real well on being committed and consistent on that. That creates uncertainty for professional firefighters who want that certainty. That has not been provided. So that is a con. The only thing we're losing, right, is we want to remain Roy. We want to keep our fire department. But we haven't been doing that really to where we should be. So I can't speak of any cons if we're meeting the expectations. The con is you're losing your fire department that's been here since 1955. So I can't get into specifics of, if we go to Weber, I think they provide a great service. I don't know their deficiencies, or I can't speak to that. So that's a long answer, probably more than what you wanted. But that's kind of where I sit on it. We're here because, and I have an obligation to make sure the residents and the firefighters, we meet that expectation, and we haven't been. So what's the path forward to do that? And I would say, and commit, and I want to say, promise that we'll continually fund the fire department appropriately to that expectation that you want. It's your fire department.
So I think you brought up a good point in all of that, that when you're going back through the files, back to what, the 80s, you said, I think, is that where?
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s, yeah.
Historically, we haven't done a great job at it. And I think that we do have to take that into account. Like, we do have to realize, like, if we're gonna change this, that we can't keep doing the same things that we kept doing, like, oh, we're gonna fix this and then we're gonna drape off and then droop off and then we're gonna fix it and droop off, fix it and droop off. And that's kind of what's been happening for, it feels like decades. And so, and I feel like that's not fair to residents, it's not fair to employees, because it does put us on a roller coaster instead of, a steady course or whatever. And so I do think that we do have to take our history into account, because in reality, a city council can only promise things for 2 years, because your city council changes every 2 years. Like, I can say, oh, I'm here 4 years and I promise I'll do this, but I'm one vote. Does that make sense? Like, and so I do think we do have to take that into account when we're making this decision. Like, we can have the best intentions and want to do the best things, but in 2 years, someone else may have a different idea. And it's not that to say that their idea is wrong or bad, but that could be different. And so we could promise something for 2 years, but that's the extent we can really truly promise something as a council. So I think, I like that you brought up the history of it. I think that's important to think about when we're thinking about this, because I think that every decision we make, we have to think of the future. We have to think not just 5 years in the future, but 20 years in the future. So I do think that's important. I did want to go back to your first slides too. I did have a question about the fifth, when you brought up, sorry, maybe not the first ones. It was the ones that had the $52.19 and then yeah. So, okay. So that was if we went to Weber Fire, is that correct? Okay. And so, and that only include, okay. So if we went to Weber Fire, the stay one, so Weber Fire pays how much more percent than we do for our firefighters, and just, what is it up
Well,
to?
when they presented, we estimate we're approximately 14-15% below, but we only try to hit that mid benchmark. Districts typically pay higher, and they estimated, I believe, that they were 22% below.
Okay,
So this would increase them up to theirs. The amounts I'm giving you would only increase them up to the mid for the rest of the cities, because that's who we benchmark against, is those cities nearby.
okay, so the 10741 that was with We Stay, that is, just to clarify, that does include the capital expenses as well, and but only to median wage, not higher. Okay, just clarifying to make sure I understand.
Medium for surrounding cities that have fire departments.
Okay.
I think the reason why we wanted to show this assumption is because we want to compare apples to apples. If we're saying that they're, because some of these things haven't happened, the 27 COLA, the salary adjustments, the capital, none of those decisions have been made right now. But when we're comparing these, district, city, we wanted to create an even playing field with that. And that's why we're adding that into that. Now, obviously, if you were to drop those things off, that amount that we're paying today is a lot less, obviously.
Okay, I was just wanting to clarify that I understood it like you were saying. So.
I think one of the issues with us, the city council, is that we don't want to we're scared to make decisions because sometimes we don't feel like we have all the information, but I also don't want to be in a position where it seems like a simple answer to me. I've been given this information it looks pretty plain to me that going to the Weber Fire District, it's gonna be saving the taxpayers money. It's gonna fix the problem with the pay for the fire department as well. From what I've heard from residents or any other thing around, there's not really a whole lot of downside or any downside that anybody's been able to bring to me that has had enough weight to it to make me think that keeping the fire department within Roy is a more benefit to our taxpayers or to us than going with the fire district. So, I mean, as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, unless somebody can give me a really good reason why, that's other than the sentiment of the many, many years that Roy has been here in the history behind the fire department being in Roy. I'm not seeing a downside with going to Weber County. That's
What's
my
hard for me is I don't want to advocate it, but I also know the reality of it. And the history in the past is what's led me here to take my emotion out of it and purely do what's best for the residents and employees. Someone who has struggled with the pay and wages where I worked before, it's hit me in my retirement big time. And my goal is to hit the check mark, keep the service levels. And I truly believe Weber Fire, especially out of gas, we can do that. I have no doubt. And I can say that confidently. I want to take care of the firefighters and employees. That's what matters, and the residents of Roy. Purely that is the driving force behind this. And if it helps the taxpayers, and if it helps the other departments to sustain the city, because we don't have a crystal ball, what's the future hold? I would like you to commit and promise me and to keep the wages up. But I think we're here because they couldn't before. And I don't want to be disrespectful to the past council or mayors or city. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the history shows somehow we haven't. And it's led us into a larger gap being conservative. So the fact is, fundamentally, we can't, in my opinion, I don't know how we're going to fund the fire department in the future if we want to keep the exceptional service. I can't promise you that when over 7/8 of my department is under 5 years. And I'm losing people, now losing the experience. So I would love to keep it Roy. I want to make that clear. I want these guys, we have something amazing here. But can we meet those two objectives? And I don't know if we can looking in the future.
And that's my only concern as well about the whole thing is it hasn't been fixed for a very long time. And it's not for a lack of trying with the previous council either. And it just seemed like it was the decision, like just too much information and not wanting to make the decision to be scared of what the future holds, holding us hostage about making a good decision that's going to benefit everybody all around. For me, just seeing the numbers I've been given, I don't see the downside. I really don't. I think if I'm only going to be here for 2 years, I want to make an impact while I'm here. And I don't think this is a negative. I don't have the feeling. I do have the fear that I don't know that I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the future holds for this. And I don't know the final numbers of how it's going to equal out. But basically from everything I've been told, I'm currently on the side of going with the Weber Fire District.
And go ahead.
Oh, just to be fair, when we had the presentation from Chief Brent Clark, I asked him some questions that were kind of probing for any possible downsides. You know, I asked about response time. I've asked about the stations we have and where they're located, how many calls they had taken, and that kind of thing. And he came out and said, yeah, well, I mean, the response time would be pretty similar. You know, you have a great department. You know, you don't have a morale problem. You know, everyone, they're happy here. You don't have a culture problem. And they have exceptional service. And he said that to us about our department. But he said that the fire district can even offer some other things in the way of equipment and training that they do that we haven't been able to fund for our department even. So we might even see improved service in those kinds of regards simply because they have access to more resources and not because of who works for us, because we have incredible people working for us. But just as I was asking him a few questions, like that, he talked about the number of calls. As I recall, they had I better not say that because I'm not for sure, but they are I don't know. I just recall after that presentation feeling pretty confident that the service that we would see would be very comparable to what we have now. It'd be excellent service, provided that it was fully staffed and everything. You know, if it was at its
He asked
best.
you to reach out to the other cities. I mean, that's gonna be your proof. Are they providing a good service to the other areas in the county?
He did say that Roy would be the largest city. So
Yeah.
I mean, doubling their jurisdiction may have something, but I mean, even when I asked him about that, he said, like, it really shouldn't be an issue, because you're gonna have the stations that are probably gonna stay where they are, and they're in a good, locality for our city and things. And it just sounded like it was really gonna be a pretty smooth transition when we very first heard from him. And now we've got more information here, and I don't have a lot of reservations. I did do a little bit more research. I don't know if now is the time to talk about other,
Yeah.
potential options. As I told everyone, I was committed to looking into all the different things. And I called up Chief Crozet in Plain City and just asked him, because he has a part volunteer department, a part-time paid, and then a kind of part-time is part of them is volunteer. And they've got 8,500 residents in 12 square miles. So how many we got? 40,000?
Almost 40,000. not
Almost.
quite.
Yeah, so not 8,500. And he doesn't have a fully, volunteer staff anymore. He does have some paid people now. And he was upfront and told me, yeah, because they're volunteer, many of them will start their careers here and then they'll go to other places. And so they have, lower experience than we would have traditionally here at Roy, and he's like, yeah, that's just kind of how we are. And that's okay with us. The size of our city and the number of residents that we have, it works for them. And as he was talking, it didn't sound like it would work for us because we have so many more people. And it didn't sound like a good fit, but I got some more info on that. And so what I'd love to do is get this information and information I've gotten. And there was even some chatter years ago about a southern district, which didn't sound like it was a good option either. But I feel like all these options are important to present to the public so that when we feel like we've made a decision, that we can show we've made an informed decision, and we can have public input at that point as well. And because why do we even talk after him? What he said is just perfect. It's just all the reasons why we haven't been able to deliver fire service and why it's not working, and through no fault of the chief or his staff, but just what do we want? And I think that's a question we need to reflect back onto residents, is like, what do you want? And then we can go forward and decide to make that happen. So that was just another thing that I looked into, because I knew that was a possibility. You can do a volunteer fire department, and as I looked into it, I just didn't sound like it fits our city. But
Yeah, I'm glad you brought
was
that up.
back in the day. 'Cause
yes,
then
he did say that.
but
It did
yeah,
start that
that's-
way. He did.
So how do your firemen feel about this? So if we brought them up, as far as we can, but it still wouldn't be at the level of the Weber Fire District, I mean, would they still want to stay with Roy Fire?
I
for their
think
life?
everyone would say, I'd like to stay at Roy. But, it's a mix. I have to, and I've told them this and explained it. Everybody who has a child, I would expect you to love each of them equally. You may like them differently,
Right.
but you love them equally. And as I've looked at this is hard for me. I have to look at the brand new kid coming in, and he's on a tier 2 system, has to stay longer now. Where is he going to be? Raising his family, his kids. I know a lot of people work 2 to 3 jobs. The job already itself is hard on a family and relationships. So when I look at that, which one do you like more? I love them all. So I got to find the best solution for all of them. And I could speak to this. Typically, if you're paid really well, you're a happy employee, and that customer service comes across to the residents. I don't know anyone who doesn't like to be paid what they should be within the market. That's really all that they have asked over time, is to keep it consistent. So each of them will say, well, given the choice, I don't want to go, and I can't speak for them, but I think I've heard enough. We don't want to go. However, the pay is so drastic now. it's huge. They can't afford to work here. And so that's obviously, the data shows how many we're losing. So the next thing, well, if we want to keep it, what can we do? What can you commit to? And history has shown we haven't been able to do that. And so to them, I would think every one of them would say, I want to be paid more, because it's directly going to affect when someday they get to my point. I don't know anybody who says, I don't want to get paid more. And so, and to say, to put a different patch on a uniform, no, it's sad. It's not going to be easy for them. But I know I can make the decision that when they retire, maybe they thank me one day to say, hey, my family, my kids all benefit. For instance, retirement, insurance, everything is going up. And so when I look at it, I could not invest in my 457 because I wasn't making enough money. I was trying to survive. They now maybe have that opportunity where I can maybe invest into a retirement, a different one, a 457 or Roth. I have the ability to do it. So when I retire, I can do that now. Everything affects them and their families and their little kids. So when I make this decision, I seem to go down the rabbit's hole. But again, I look at everybody and I don't know any one of them who won't appreciate getting paid more, having more opportunities. I just don't see, if Roy can't do that, then I'm forced to a corner to say, and that's why we're here today. I don't need to be here longer to come up with a decision of what needs to be done and to wait it out. I don't think I'm doing my job. So my job is to find a solution. These are the solutions that I've come up with.
I just want to make one add, sorry.
Okay, it's okay, go ahead.
One more, in addition to what my support for going to the fire district is I know I'm not making the decision here alone, because we got to have resident input too. We're going to be having open house and a lot of input from the residents. They're ultimately the ones going to tell us what they want. And so right now, I think that this is just supporting us saying, hey, let's move forward with bringing this to the public and letting them see the information we have. So I'm for pushing this process forward to bring it to the public. If there might be more information that comes up from the public that might actually change the weight of maybe the decision to do that. So, but as of right now, that's what I'm amending my
Yeah.
statement.
Well,
I'm not making the
Yeah, because
decision.
it's a discussion.
It's going to be, it's a
Well, so,
discussion.
since we're talking about this, Janelle was gonna talk next, but since we're on the fire subject, Diane, did you want to give your talk about what the tax rate would have to be in order to, do we want to, are we gonna talk about that?
You guys, that's the next discussion item.
Can I maybe
Yeah.
jump in and ask just another question? And I've asked this otherwise, but I understand that a few years ago, and I don't know if a few means 15 or 20 years ago, Weber Fire District was in the same position we are now. They couldn't they couldn't get capital for their equipment. They couldn't pay for their staff. You know, do you know, if we're trying to figure out what that problem was, why were they having that same problem and why aren't they now? And do you know that information? Do you know that?
I mean, I've worked near Weber Fire, worked in Ogden Situate, so I don't know. I think Britt needs to answer that question of knowing the history. But I think fundamentally they weren't funding it appropriately, and then something changed, right? Whether it's board members, and they decided this is the expectation and this is what we want. It has to be appropriately funded. The fire department is expensive. It just is. And so is police. It's just very expensive. And so I think that's the challenge you guys are up against, is fundamentally the culture has been, and I don't want to say this disrespectfully, it's like crisis mode. Let's wait till the wheels fall off, then we fix it. And that's what's being done with all the departments. And I don't mean that negatively to any of the work that they've done. I'm just giving a kind of a broad, painting a picture of what I believe has happened. And so at some point they made a decision, oh, this is what we want for our residents, and they have to be willing to pay for it. And that's kind of where we're at, except now the gap with us has grown so large, it's exponential, the tax increase just for the fire department to get us to the middle, let alone what police, public works, and parks, and everyone deserves to be in the market like we are. And fortunately, we do have somewhat of a very viable solution to hit the checkbox. So I think that's a question that Brett needs to answer, Chief Clark. I just don't have it.
And maybe this can help a little bit too. From his presentation, he said that comparing all the fire districts across the Wasatch Front, they decided they're going to stay in the top 2/3 of that every year. And so every year they make an adjustment or they look at it again to stay in the top 2/3. And so I don't know if it sounds like if they were in such a position as we are now, back then, we're not even close to 2/3 of nothing. Like we're so far below median. That's not even in the conversation, but they are already so far up ahead and they're probably not going to fall down that low because they're not just to the median. They're like in the top 2/3. So if they have to kind of go up and down within that 2/3, that makes sense to me. Anyway, I don't know if that helps, but I took that note from his presentation back in February.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is, I just heard this, so I could be wrong. I'm spreading rumors. That was like a good 20 years ago. I don't know if that's factual, so don't take it as fact. But I'm saying if it has been 20 years and they've kept up the whole time, then I think that they've probably
Well, there's
solved
some
the
information. I just wanted to know
Yeah,
if what I'd heard is accurate or what you knew, but. so
I can
appreciate
tell you
you
when
giving
Chief
that.
Sullivan came from Arizona, he had a vision. I think he had goals. And that's what he put forth is with the size of the county and the needs it has. I was telling Matt this today. I worked in the valley as a medic. They did that Ogden City, they contracted with Ogden City. A leader came in and decided the district needs to grow. Why? Or needs to grow with the size of the inflation, with the growth around us, and to provide that service. And so there was just a commitment to saying, again, changing the vision and the expectations. This is what we need to do, and they worked on that. What you're finding is, to me, and you compare us to say South Ogden, they've been doing a TNT for years, and they say when the fire department drops, we do the wage study, we increase. We just fundamentally do this when we need to, with all the different departments. We're behind that. We just barely approved the TNT, truth and taxation last year, right? So I just think, again, we haven't kept up with where we should for whatever reason. I don't want to be disrespectful to the past mayors or councils or city managers. I think that's not appropriate. I don't know exactly why. I don't know the circumstances. But that's my guess is they decided it was a decision. And the board made decisions to properly fund their fire department.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does this mean you want to move into the wage discussion, the wage committee discussion, or?
Well, yeah, Janelle, you want to move into the wage discussion?
So we've been meeting for maybe since the end of January, 1st February, every Monday, me and Janelle and Diane and Matt and then Amber and me, Brody and Natalie, trying to figure out wages, keep our employees here. And Janelle is going to take over that discussion.
well, thanks. Mostly going to read this because I didn't want to leave out any parts. So as part of our ongoing commitment to fiscal responsibility and employee retention, the Wage Survey Committee recently completed a comprehensive wage study. As I talk about this, I will welcome clarification when we are finished by any other committee member in case I represent something incorrectly. As part of this study, we wanted to determine if our current pay structure was still the best fit for Royce City or if a different system would serve us better. So first we evaluated the system. We looked at several different pay models and compared our current system to those used in other cities. After weighing the pros and cons of changing to a different system with the goal being to maintain good employees and provide good service to our residents, we determined that the system itself isn't the issue that needs addressed. Our primary challenge is much simpler: keeping pace with a highly competitive job market and the rising cost of living. We found that our current system remains generally effective and significant costs remains generally effective, but that it would cost significant amounts to overhaul it. And our money would be better spent directly on our employees' wages, and this would better serve our taxpayers and employees. And it's not to say that change couldn't happen in the future to our system, but when looking at the different models, they would all rely on the same issue we have right now, and that is keeping up with wages. So we also requested some data on how we pay our employees, specifically looking at the balance between our general fund and our enterprise funds, like water and sewer. For instance, Public Works gets paid out of both, depending on the job. So we explored whether shifting expenses between these funds could provide relief. My conclusion, at least after reviewing that, is that Roy City already is utilizing these funds in a very efficient and appropriate manner. There aren't any hidden efficiencies to unlock there. We already run lean and effective in our fund management. The path forward, I think, or what we've kind of talked about, was that we shifted, once we discovered those things, we shifted our primary focus to closing the wage gap. So that was the main focus of it. But I do want to also mention that part of that was keeping up with capital costs as well, not just addressing the wage gap, but the wage gap kind of is the blaring thing, but our capital costs do affect that in the future as well. So we decided we need to ensure that Roy City remains a place where talented people want to work and can afford to stay. Some turnover is expected, but the amount of turnover we have been experiencing the last 3 to 5 years isn't sustainable or safe for our residents or our infrastructure. To explain the specific strategy we've developed to reach those competitive market rates, I'll turn the time to Diane, but I just want to finish real fast. And Diane will walk us through a wage scale that we came up with. Well, really, Amber, we can give the credit. She's the genius behind it, but that we all thought would be the best option. And I just wanted to do a reminder as well that this is a discussion. We're not making a decision tonight on any particular amount or anything like that, but we want to start the process of educating ourselves as a council as a whole so that we can make the best decision for our community. And obviously questions and ideas from other council members and the public and staff or whatever are welcome. So I'll turn the time to Diane, maybe explaining the wage scale we decided.
Okay, maybe I'll just write on the cool board up there,
Yeah.
and then Amber can kind of, our cool stuff officially, right, so we can see it. I think some of the key points that I thought were very interesting, just so we can remember, for a wage correction, each 1% equals approximately $175,000. So I think these are just some interesting points that I want you to be able to think about and look at. When we talk about a 2.5% COLA, that's not a 2.5% tax increase. A 2.5% COLA is approximately $450,000, which is approximately a 9% tax increase. So sometimes those numbers get a little bit mixed up. We talk about 2.5 and we kind of start thinking it's 9%, and that gets a little bit mixed up. So the COLA that we just approved requires a 9% tax increase. If we talk about year 27, that COLA is going to be possibly a little bit different, about 2.8%. And so that's going to end up being approximately a 10% tax increase. This is just for COLAs, okay? Now, if we talk about full wage adjustment, if we talk about, and remember what full wage adjustment is for us, that's median. That's not top, this is median. So if we talk about full, that's called median wage adjustment, then that's going to be about $1.8 million. And that's going to be a 36% tax increase. Now, there is a really important concept of how we could do this differently. But one of the things I want you to realize is last year, we had proposed a 28% tax increase. And I hate to even use the numbers because 28% really means so very little when it talks about reality. But with that, what we were going to do is we were only going to be able to get to half of median wage. We were only going to be able to get half. And now this year, we were going to make it the full way, right? Well, now here we are behind that full amount. And so we've got ourselves, in another bind, in another pickle. So if we don't do the full median amount, and this is going to be the cool information that Amber is going to show us better, we're still now just putting ourselves that much further behind. And as I've talked to many different people, I guess the concept is, do we just kind of sneakily try to make up the difference, or do we just go for it, rip off the bandage so we can move forward? Because one of the most important comments I've heard is, it feels like we can't do anything as a city. We can't do anything as a city until we can finally get our wages up to median level. I mean, we're talking about paying our employees just fair. We're not saying overboard. We're just saying, let's have fair payment. Are we being fair to our citizens when we're not fair to our staff? I don't believe that to be the case. When we're talking about being fair, it has to be on both sides of things. So I can write up some more things here. I don't know that I even need to, because Amber's probably going to be talking about that, or do you have a slide for that? But anyway, so if we weren't going to do the full amount, there are some different ways of doing it. When we talked about it last year, it probably wasn't the most effective way. But if we talk about, if we take full median wage as the goal, and if for some reason we wanted to go less, how would we go less? How could we do that in a way that would be as fair as possible? And this would probably be the best segue for you, right, Amber, to be able to do this. And so this just gives us an idea of a way we could do it to at least be as fair as possible if we chose to still stay, kicking the can down the road, if we still think we're not going to, try to get up to that median wage. And so Amber will kind of do that for us.
Can I interject just a question, unless you're going to answer this? And if so, that's fine, but I feel like maybe I'm a little behind. How is it that 28% last year would have brought us halfway to median, but full median wage correction is not 56%? Why is it 36%?
Oh, because we're talking about the COLA. So if we would have taken 36% plus 9%, that gets us closer. But last year numbers might be just a little tiny bit different. But because we're talking about what the whole COLA would be in addition to that.
36 and 10 and 9 is about what I just found out. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So last year also, they elected to, when it was voted upon, they reduced the COLA amount in order to put more towards the wage adjustments. So when we just did the COLA, because we couldn't do the wage adjustments, we did the higher COLA instead of the lower one. So there is some adjustment there on that. So this slide is what she was writing up on the board pretty much. So we have the COLA that we just barely did that is going to cost the city next year about $450,000. We would like to do another one for this next year and then do the wage adjustments on top of that so that we make sure we are still current, because our wage adjustments our salary survey was done about 2 years ago. So this should keep us pretty current. So your total there of 2.7 million, that is about a 55.7% tax increase. So that's $214 a year for the average household, or $1,784 per month. Just to kind of put that in perspective without the fire department, so you can see how much the fire department does cost the city, that would reduce that down to 1.8 million without fire. And that would be about a 37% is what we'd need to fix the rest of the city without the fire department. So I know that's a large amount for 1 year. So we were trying to brainstorm some ideas of how we could, I know we had previously talked about doing a multi-year process to fix this problem. And so one idea that we came up with was we still want to do the COLA for all employees. So that would go across to everybody. But for the wage adjustments, we have some employees, not employees, but positions in the city that that are only 3% below median. We have other positions that are upwards 25% below median, which that is typically where we are losing most of our employees, is in those ones that are more off. So in order to kind of adjust that, we would like to even that out a little bit. So what we could look at is whatever amount you're like comfortable, I think we should do this amount of a tax increase this year, we could do this amount the next year, whatever you guys want to do, I could tell you how much that would buy. So if you wanted to make, let's say we have a 10% benchmark, we want to get everybody to at least 10% below median. We want to be right at median, but if we just shoot for 10%, right? So if you are currently 3% below, you would not receive a wage adjustment. You would still receive the COLA, but not the wage adjustment. If you were 15% off, you would receive a 5% bump. So what it's, instead of these large disparities, it kind of evens everyone out and it puts the money where we most need it, to the positions that are more off. So somebody that is 25% off is going to get the bulk of that money that you give us, and somebody that's closer, they wouldn't receive any of that. But everyone would at least receive a COLA, so that we're not falling further behind.
Can you talk about the capital, because we're so far behind on capital?
Because this is without capital,
This is
correct?
without capital. So this is kind of the total impact to the residents between the previous discussion and this discussion here. So if we went with Weber Fire District, you'd have what we estimate Weber Fire would increase. So the increase to the residents would be that 13%. Royce City's increase for the wages on the previous page would be that 37%, because we wouldn't need that increase in capital. The need right now would go towards fire. What we are currently saving for fire, we could use to go towards capital that we need at the city. So we would only need the increase for the wages. We wouldn't need an increase for capital. If Roy Fire stayed with Roy City, we would need the salary increases. We would also need the fire capital, which puts you at an increase of about 65%. And when you brought up the need for capital other places in the city, one thing I thought of is this does fix the fire capital, but then we still aren't saving for anything else. So eventually we would need to build that into the budget too, to start saving for Parks and Recreation, for the Aquatic Center, for the complex, so that we don't run into another situation where the complex gets closed and we have to renovate the entire thing in 1 year. We need to build a reasonable amount into every year so that we can keep up on expenses. So this does not include that. But this is kind of a summary of the two discussions.
Do you have an example of what the tax increase would be if we were like 5% below median? And if not, I will just draw it up there on the board.
If you have it, because otherwise I'd have to stop sharing my screen to find it.
So that particular idea of if we were going to go partial, so say we went 5% below median, that would cost about 1.1 million. And that would be a 21% tax increase. I mean, and still 5% off is still not really ideal, because remember, we're only at median, so that's not really good. Now we've got 8%, say we went 8% below, and that's $800,000. And that puts us at 16% tax increase. And that means we are still 8% off median wage. And just remember, if we do the capital fund, and she's kind of got it up there, but if it changes, the capital funds just for that one area is approximately 450,000. And again, remember, 450,000 is 9% tax increase. So you can just kind of remember that when you're taking a look at what those differences would be. And then, and remember, if whatever we're going to do, then you would add these up, right? You know, you'd add that up to be 19%. And if you wanted that with the full amount, then you'd add that together, which gives us the other numbers and down the road. And then capital, you'd have to add those numbers up. So it's kind of a menu, right? You just pick and choose what you're going to do on your menu on how you're going to help this problem.
I think that's a good thing, like, this is legitimately how bad it is, so people need to.
Like
Like,
every week when we look at this, we're like, oh, Lord.
I do think
You
in the
know, 'cause it's-
past, we have been scared to show you the full reality, and I think it's a good thing to put it out there and say, this is where it's at. Even if you don't elect to do the full thing, I think it's important to show you what it should be.
And again, reminding everyone, this is the medium. This isn't like high wages. This is, like she said, fair wages. And it does feel like it's very difficult. You know, we get requests from residents, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Well, it feels like we can't do those things until this is fixed. Does it make sense? Like, it feels like we're a little bit held hostage by this situation that we've, I guess, essentially as a city put ourselves in. So it just, yeah, so this was a way that we came up with that we felt like at least would let us see and help the public also see where the money's going and what percentage each amount means and what it does. So, yeah.
So what I thought I'd do for tax, what we could do is, if we did do, apparently blue is the color, all right, let's do blue. If we by chance, wanted to say, how much would that be? If we do a 55% tax increase, that would be, anyway, that would be about $17.84 per month for the average home. If we do 65%, that would be $21.04. And if you did a 37% tax increase, and that would be $11.89. Just so it gives you an idea what that does, what those percentages equate to per month on expenses and stuff like that.
So, and I think it goes back to also not just what the council wants, but like what you were saying with fire, like it depends what does the city in general, and that includes our citizens, obviously. Do we want to fix this problem? Or do we just want to keep kicking the can down? You know what I mean? Like,
So it goes back to making a plan.
right, yeah,
And that's, I think, maybe how we got here. There wasn't the plan.
yeah. And maybe in the past, we haven't communicated as well as we should have, and hopefully we can this time. I mean, I think everyone on the council is committed to trying to communicate this situation better, so hopefully that will help residents, understand it, but also sometimes they have great ideas that they have, and so if they understand the actual situation, then maybe they have some ideas too, but yeah, I just think, like you said, knowing what the actual numbers are will help us better decide what we want and what plan we want to follow, I guess, so.
I think what's important is there's no money tree.
Right,
So
I
if
wish
we
there
had the
was.
money, this isn't a problem,
right,
right? So either the sales tax got to increase, or you got to generate the money. You got to generate the money because we don't have it through this means.
right.
And that's where we're at.
I think when we talk about sales taxes, yes, that definitely helps, but it's also not consistent like property taxes. So that's what's hard when the majority of your money is going to fire and police, public safety, then, and they need that stability. That's what property tax gives that stability. And because we are required to do certain things in fire and police. And I mean, there's other departments as well, like economic development, planning. There are certain requirements that the state requires. We can't just not do certain things. And same for infrastructure. I mean, there are definitely, like, they have to follow the laws and the rules and the regulations. And so we can't just not do certain things. And anyway, so it does require a steady stream to some extent, like sales tax only plays into that to some degree. So anyway, I wish that we had a money tree though. That'd be nice.
The way I see this too is that, you know how you sign up for internet and you get a, you know, a promotional rate, and you're like, I paid $10 a month for internet. And then your promotional time goes away and you have to now pay $100 a month or whatever. And you're, you know, some people get upset, like, oh, well, now I have to pay more. It's like, actually, you were getting a discount the whole time. This is what it actually costs. And so that's the way I'm looking at it, is like, all this time, residents have been getting away with not paying for services. And those services are starting to fail us because we're not paying for them. And so, like, it's not a way to treat employees. It's not a way to treat residents. It's just to expect that we can pay a promotional rate forever, because the company's not going to give that to you either. They'll just be like, go somewhere else, you know, and that's what's exactly happening to us. People are just going somewhere else because we don't want to pay for it. And that's the way I'm looking at it, is yes, it's a big increase, as if you want to talk percentages. And then just a note on these percentages, that I think many people just look at it and go, oh, 65% of my income. It's like, that's not what it is. It's just 65% of what the current thing is. And if the current thing is not up to snuff, then you're going to have a large percentage of that current rate, which is just not cutting it. So I'm looking at it as the end of a very overstayed welcome of a promotional rate that we're getting for services, and that it's time to start paying what they're worth, because they're coming up short, right? I don't know if I've already said this, but like, in just terms of the fire department, when they had to close the station in December, and it just happened that I witnessed, you know, somebody having to call the fire department in my cul-de-sac. And it was fortunate for me, it wasn't someone that I knew well, but it still gave me an opportunity to see the response time from the station on 1900. And I'm like the furthest south and west that you can get in Royse City. And it took like 8 minutes. And it was like I got to see that happen. It's like, that is exactly what's happening, not just in fire, but everything else. If you want roads plowed, if you want garbage picked up, if you want all this stuff happen, like, you have to pay for it. And it's just this whole promotional deal is just, it's over. And it looks like a lot, but the reality is we've just kind of been getting away with paying, you know, peanuts for this services. And it just can't continue.
Another thing I want to point out.
Everybody else that has a job outside of the city, and if, you know, if your wife or your husband come home and they have the same dilemma, I mean, if you work hard and deserve a fair wage, I mean, it goes with any job. It's like, well, you fought for you know, to get a raise because you felt you were worth it. So why shouldn't we pay our residents to keep them here? So it's the same at any job. So I just feel that we've got a lot of information here tonight, and I'm glad that I was scared to get it out. I think all of us were. Every time we talked about it in a meeting, we were like, it's scary. Those are scary numbers, but I like how you break it down per month. I mean, people have to realize, all of us here on this council, we have to pay these taxes too. And so it's for all of us. And we got to figure out what kind of employees we want, what kind of service we want. And like Alexa said, you know, I mean, we have so many employees that are leaving to go to other cities who pay better. We're the training ground for so many departments. And I think people like to stay here because it's such a love of Roy, and they want to stay here. But if they can get paid so much more an hour, I mean, I would have told my husband, sorry, honey, I don't care how much you love Roy. You're going to go where the money is. I mean, and I just feel that I don't know how we got it to this place neither. But we've got to do something to bring them up to medium. Like we said, this isn't even like, wow, I'm getting paid more in Ogden City. This is just like medium. So I think this has been a good start to get this discussion out. We're not making any decisions tonight. We just wanted to talk about the Weber fire and talk about the wages. And if you guys had any more comments that you wanted to?
Amber, were you going to say
So-
something?
I thought you were going to correct me.
I wasn't going to
Please.
correct you. I was just going to say, when you talk about the percentage, please keep in mind too, that that's not a percentage of their total tax bill. I think that needs to be communicated to the residents. So when they receive their tax bill, it's probably a couple $1,000s. And right now it's the 384 is how much comes to Royse City. So the percentage is based off just that piece that they're paying to Roy City. It's not 65% of their total tax bill. Because I think when they hear, I mean, that's a lot, you're gonna increase my, my taxes 50%, but it's only our portion
Right. I think
That's
that's
important
the
to get
big
communicated
miscommunication that
to the
people
residents.
need
That,
to look
this is
at
the
it.
amount that
Right.
on the average house comes to Roy City is $385.
Any more comments? Anybody wanted to say anything else, or are we ready to adjourn and?
So I did have a question. So it sounds like from what people were saying that we do want to move forward with exploring more of moving to Weber Fire. Like we're not just cutting it off and saying, don't do it. That's what it sounded like to me. I just want to, is that, I mean, did you guys feel like that was telling you to move forward and, okay,
I
to
thought so
discover
too,
more
though.
about that? Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you guys were feeling the same as me.
Do we feel like we're ready for open houses and whatever other public input settings on both of these topics?
I think that's the next step.
I think we
That's it?
need to. I'm not sure we're ready, but
Well, I
we
mean,
gotta
like, I
get
know we
ready.
need to, but like, is that the next thing?
Yeah.
Because we kind of have all the
We
options.
don't have a whole lot of, I mean, we have time, but we don't have a lot of time meeting wise, how many meetings we have. So yeah, we need to push it.
Yeah.
Right, because we have to make a decision on Weaver Fire by June.
Yeah.
Yeah, June, that's, I mean, that's.
I can just suggest, I would say that we send out an email and maybe get some dates for the first part of May to either do it.
Yeah.
In coordination with city council meeting or find us time for a special meeting
Yeah.
and coordinate that. And we can just do that.
So,
Find a time when it works for the council members and we can, because I do think you have to give plenty of notice to get the public there. So
We do want them there. Would you recommend different, like separate, I'm sorry, the open houses or town halls per each issue, or? I mean, they're kind of separate.
Yeah, we're kind of together.
And they're kind of together.
They're intertwined.
Yeah.
They are.
They're intertwined.
This is
and
like
we would have
a,
Weaver Fire District there to answer questions. Didn't you say you wanted to have them?
Yeah,
there
whatever you
too?
guys want. I'm sure they'd be happy to do it.
Let's have them there if we can do that.
So then I know we've talked about two different styles of doing it, so I don't know, if we want to do more open house style and then do another one that's more, or someone suggested we do maybe start as like a formal presentation type one and then move into open house or vice versa. So I guess that's another decision we have to make, because I do think, like, to me, it would make more sense to do a presentation first so that people know what's out there and then they can form questions to ask later in the open house style. But I don't know, that's just,
Yeah,
That makes
I guess we
sense.
can discuss that.
yeah.
yeah, you guys don't have to decide that now unless you all
Okay, okay.
agree.
Okay, good.
But
I just more am like, when's the date? Like, I want to, you know me, I gotta have all the plan. So we don't just be like, someday we'll have a,
well, you
thing,
guys
and it
can pick
doesn't
it
happen.
now if you want. I mean,
Pull out the good
I
calendar.
don't have my calendar with me.
But we just need to respond to you.
I know, if
Yeah, we
it
can get an
does-
email out tomorrow and then just watch for it and then we can, if you can all respond.
So, any more comments, any more things anybody wants to say? Brian, we need to get a defibrillator for you over there.
I'm trying to be quiet.
It's a lot.
I was thinking, as we're talking about the town hall interaction type thing, you know, what are we hoping to accomplish and how will we get the feeling or the information from the citizens? If we have personal interaction, that might be, you know, that's good. They can ask questions individually, but it might be more difficult for us to get a feel or have everybody else hear what the general feeling is, because it will all be so interpersonal. They're going to talk to the fire district people and us. And then at some point in time, if you have the traditional town hall setting, then they come up to the microphone, then everyone can hear, we can hear what they're saying, and we can kind of get a feel for it. So I think both have great merits. How do we do it so we know what the end result is? Because we don't want to do it just because it's nice. We also need an end result, which is information.
I felt like in one meeting, we talked about like a questionnaire at the open house, but maybe I'm imagining that in my head, but
What do you mean?
just like, so when they come and leave, they can leave
Oh.
questions, or we can ask preference, like, do you think just overall, is it better to move to, Weaver Fire? Whatever the question wants to be. That's not a great question. I'm just saying, like, we could come up with a couple of questions, a short
Yeah, maybe we
questionnaire.
can have flyers with all this information on it too, that people could see all the different avenues that we could go. And then put, this would, if we keep our fire department, or if we don't keep our fire department, and then they can actually have that in hand and read it. And then if we, get our, employees up to medium wage, this is how much it would cost. I don't know, I think people would like to see that somehow, and maybe if we had that printed out, you think that would be good, and then,
I think a printout would be good, than having multiple ways for the comments to come in, whether they want to, because if we send out emails, or they can get the information any other way, they can send an email for their opinion, they can fill out a sheet at the open house. I feel
Yeah.
better about having an open house than to just straight give the information first, because it sometimes gives the residents a little incorrect, like they have more time to stew about something and to be angry about something, and not being able to talk to somebody directly about it. And it just creates a more of a boiling pot for their anger to not have a direction or questions to be answered. And when it simmers for too long, I think it can be a problem. So I think open house, having people being able to talk to them and say, hey, we want your open comments about this. I mean, and not just give them, hey, this is what we're trying to do, and then later have them.
but I want to have a
Come.
printout too, so we all
Yeah.
don't have different figures.
Yeah,
Like, well, I
definitely.
talked to her, and she said it'll give you this much a month, and so what about,
And we can break an open house up to where,
Yeah.
it starts at this time, and we can
Right.
give a short presentation and to give handouts, and give another one a little bit later, maybe an hour later.
yeah, we'll discuss it
Something
with
like that.
everyone and figure out how we want to do it, but.
But I like that one better, to where people can be answering questions real time than
Right.
to let.
Right.
them get.
I think the flyers, very important. We should
Right.
definitely do
Right,
that.
I don't want to be
Yep.
saying something and.
I think we need to go formal. Personally, an open house is great if you're showing off a road you want them to see, but I think we just need to be straightforward, formal.
Right, and how would you?
I
like us
think
to
you
that?
do a formal presentation, and then I think you have them, the public,
Then come and then be able to ask questions?
either comment or ask questions. That way they feel like they've all been heard.
Mhm.
And that way you don't have this lingering, he said, she said.
Right, yeah, and we don't want a screaming match and.
No,
Yeah,
no.
but to get the word out, to even get it, the word out to make sure everybody is aware of it. We have that newspaper, we could put that in, huh?
That's right.
So that's the most important thing, I think, is just to spread the word once we get the date. And then I think once all the citizens get the information, we'll hopefully be able to tell. I mean, no one's gonna say, yay, yeah, I want that tax increase. I mean, I'm gonna have to pay it too, but we're gonna say, do you want to have a good service, for your roads, for your fire, for your police, for every department. This is what it's gonna take in order for you to get quality service, and if that's what you want, and that's why you live in Roy, then that's what it's gonna be, so.
So I did want to say to Brian, on your point, I think there's merits to both, but my only concern with the formal one is there are people that won't ask questions in that type of setting. Does that make sense? And
It's
so
true.
that was my,
They will hear.
maybe there's a combo type of option.
We'll
Anyway, we can talk about,
follow you to your car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, but,
or your house.
or your house,
Or if there's like follow-up that they need, like.
Yeah.
I mean,
That can be on the flyer.
yeah, and I'm even thinking like a fax sheet, like,
Yeah.
what does it mean to increase, like just what Amber said, is, hey, this is not what this percentage increase mean? So what does it not mean? You know, it doesn't mean this percentage of your income. It doesn't mean this percentage of your tax bill. It doesn't mean, you know,
I think you get a better overall gauge on the public's opinion with the formula. Now, that's what I think, but I'm one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Right, could
Well,
we
what about
just start
formal
out formal
questionnaire?
and then break in and say, do you want to talk to anybody personally or ask, you know, with what you've seen? Feel free, we'll give you a half hour. We'll figure it out.
So how are we
We'll
gonna
have
get
to
this word
discuss
out
how we're gonna do it.
without the newspaper? Okay, we'll divide up the city and we'll take flyers out. We'll pound the pavement, everybody. We've done that, right? We've done it before.
We have,
We've done it for elections. We've done it for all sorts of things. Let's pound the pavement. Get that word out.
so we're gonna get an email. Is that what we said? An email for deciding on the date?
Okay, so any further discussion or do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
I have a second. Okay.
Cyan was really on that.
Okay. Meeting's
All in favor?
over. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it was a lot to hear and it was a lot for us to write down.
oh,